Hey guys, it's me, EODGamer here, and let's talk about Jade versus Argenti, in which is actually the better investment for your overall account in case you are thinking of picking up an erudition character. One is quantum, one is physical, but let's get into the nitty-gritties of the differences. And as always, we don't waste time on this channel, and I always like to start off with the current value of the characters because when we are spending money, we want to know exactly what it does for our account right now. And the best way, I think, to see this is we talked a little bit about the teams that they play in or Jade played in our team's video, but to put it into illustration purposes, let's take a look at this one over here. So you can see that there are 8 teams, which we talked about in the 8 teams of Honkai Star Rail on the channel already. And more importantly, the ones that Jade plays in is the yellow and the purple ones. For those of you who are just like listening to me in the background, I will tell you. So Jade and Argenti both play into the hyper carry kind of style. They can be played as like massive DPS with good investment and blah blah blah. Most characters can be played here. Fast and often is any characters who want to play in teams that attack a lot. Jade skills off very nicely with characters who want to attack a lot, builds her stacks. Argenti also can attack very often because of his very low burst cost, so he plays into any teams that requires him to attack very quickly and often. Whereas where Jade really stands out is the breadthness or broadness of teams that she can play in. Out of all 8 of the team types in the game, I would argue that she can play to half of them, follow up attacking teams as well as any HP decaying teams. Jade is able to function in as well, which is quite a very broad roster already, and it's quite interesting in my opinion. So now let's go back into the current value that we see over here. So in my opinion, current value, Jade definitely plays into much more teams. Argenti would play into less teams. Both of them can be used in the pure fiction game mode as well. They can be used outside. They are pretty decently strong units, but really their specialty is mostly thinking of pure fiction. If you are struggling in pure fiction, you don't really have good AoE DPS, these two are very worth considering. In my opinion, in the current value camp, Jade probably stands out a little bit more because of the number of teams that she can place in, and also at the same time, novelty is a very big factor. By purchasing a new character now, you probably will get a little bit more enjoyment in the game. New characters always give you that very nice novelty feeling that you get. But considering current value is not the only thing that we need to think of, we also need to think about, are there any existing alternatives in the game already? Because if you already have a nice shoe that is still working, why do you need another one? I tell that to myself all the time. But let's talk about these 2 characters in the alternatives faction. Since we are thinking about clearing pure fiction game mode, it's very important to then consider, or if we are specifically looking for pure fiction, and we'll expand that in a bit, is which other characters can dish out AoE quantum and AoE physical damage as well. One of them, for example, in the physical section will be a character like Clara. She does a lot of AoE physical. Boot Hill, you can say that he does enough physical damage, but he's more single target related, so not super great in a pure fiction game mode. Other options is, for example, your Su Sang, who also does some sort of physical, but again is single target. So these 2 characters I don't think are fair alternatives, but they are good physical breakers if you are looking for them for other game modes. So really, right now, Argenti's main competition will be a character like Clara, who is an AoE physical. The thing about Clara, and I guess to some extent you can consider like physical MC, the thing about Clara is she doesn't want speed, she wants enemies to move faster, and Argenti moves very quickly. So they are kinda, in the sense, opposites in terms of their preference for speed. And I think that in pure fiction game mode, Argenti is slightly more favored because if he moves very often, the enemies don't move a lot. You can get more turns out of the turn order. You don't have to depend on the enemy cycles as well. So I think that overall, Argenti is much better so far as we can see in the alternative section. Whereas on the other hand, for a character like Jade, she does have quite a few quantum competition already. Even a character like Fucc, I will argue, has good amounts of quantum application in AoE. If you're just looking to target like some sort of squishy monsters that are summoned, Fucc can probably out and burst down a lot of squishies, especially with some sort of like weakness break efficiency, or maybe you just take like 2 breaks and then your other characters can do it. So Fucc actually offers a lot of quantum already, if that's not the primary element that you're focusing on. So surprise, I'll actually put Fucc here because of her strong AoE nature, and she gets her uptime on the out relatively quickly, and some of you might be building her a bit more for regen too. You have other characters like Qingque, who is decent at AoE quantum, just drink a bit of skill points, but you can get away with it with like other characters, for example, like Sparkle, Funnel Battery, and stuff like that. And Dela is also actually pretty decent at AoE fashion, especially if the game mode has a lot of squishy monsters, like 5, and then out of all 5 of them, 4 of them are squishies. Dela actually can keep attacking, going again. She gets a lot of energy from killing targets. She hits very, very quickly as well. Gets a lot of damage buff. So she's like a pseudo AoE character. So the alternatives for Jades in terms of clearing pure fiction game mode is actually much more than other characters, like for example like Argenti, because quantum is a pretty popular element already. In this category, I'll definitely will give it more towards Argenti in terms of clearing for what you are probably planning to pull them for, which is Argenti is much rarer in terms of element for pure fiction game mode. However, that's not the only thing that we need to consider, because pure fiction game mode is just one aspect of their entire kit. The other aspect is what else can they do outside of pure fiction game mode, and that is where I think there are much fewer alternatives for Jade in terms of future potential. Now we know that we are going to have new Xianzhou Luofu, Xianzhou something characters that are coming up, and if any of them have a characteristics of like Clara or like Blade, who are counter mechanic, or we are playing on for example high amounts of HP sapping requirements, Jade actually has no alternatives and is likely going to be the best in slot character for a lot of these aggro characters that want to do counter and follow up as a dual DPS. Why do I say that? Is she plays around follow-up attacks, she reduces their HP, so they set a bit of HP to help you proc any ability that you're looking for. At the same time, you can easily slap an aggro drawer, like for example, a unit like Lynx, to aggro one of the main characters, and that is an aspect that we already touched on our best team compositions video on the channel. You can check it out if you're interested and you want more detail on that. But in that category, I would say that Jade doesn't really have too many alternatives for future teams that are coming up as well. But let's talk about the next section, which is really leading into that point, and that is future value. So Argenti is very clear. You are purchasing him mostly for current. You want to clear current content. You need a breaker, physical AoE breaker. You need physical damage. You want to clear pure fiction game mode. You just want to hedge your risk in case there's any physical damage coming about. Argenti is very strong, don't get me wrong. He does a lot, but he is quite niche, and his roles that he's fulfilling is specific to a lot of enemy monsters, physical weakness. Argenti is the man to get. Whereas Jade actually has a bit more multiple things that she plays into. She not only plays into the IPC faction of the other guys like Topaz and Nambi, Aventurine and stuff like that, which we'll talk about in a bit of Hoyover's tendencies, but more importantly, she plays into upcoming trends of the direction changing. We are in early days, we don't have any official information yet, but it could be that the Hoyoverse is intending to go in towards a counter mechanic kind of follow-up playstyle. For those of you who don't know, there are two types of follow-up attackers. One is the obvious follow-up attackers. Let's put a more obvious character like Dr. Ratio, the one that literally follow up attacks and scales with speed, whereas a character like Clara doesn't scale with speed and scales with enemy movement instead, and also follow-up attack through counters. So there are two different types. We have a lot of development in the follow-up attackers, the Dr. Ratio, Topaz, Nambi, Aventurine, kind of typical playstyle. We still do not have a lot of options for the counter follow-up playstyle, and that is where I think things are going to go. There are not many characters in the game that actually play very well into that aspect. Probably the only characters that play well is like Blade, Clara, Lynx, and March 7 maybe. That's about it. We only have like 4 characters, so it's definitely a new avenue that Hoyoverse can do to spice up the game a bit, sell more characters, and I think that these future trends likely are in favor of a character, for example like Jade. We don't see her full value yet right now in the patch that she's being released, but more importantly that the stage is slowly being set, and once more official information is coming out, look for whether the characters are follow-up in nature, counter-attacking in nature, or if they even benefit from HP sapping. If that's the case, Jade might not be a main DPS, but she could be a very crucial secondary DPS piece to the puzzle for any teams that you might be planning to form in future, and the meta will shift, but we need more official information to actually conclude that, and that is for future value. So future value, I'd say Jade outperforms much more significantly, whereas for Argenti, he is kind of a stable beat stick. He is only going to be on a downward trend because more erudition characters will come out, and eventually we will get more physical characters in the game. We only have a couple, so definitely they are going to plan to introduce maybe a bit more physical characters eventually. So for this reason, I'll definitely rank Jade slightly higher for the future value side of things. And next up, let's talk about potential. Now, this category is slightly different from future value, and future value talks about how whether a character is going to be better in future and what are their tendencies in terms of power creep, investment value. But for potential, we are actually looking at the company itself and their tendencies of what they want to do. We have Knights of Beauty which hasn't been explored at all, which could mean that both of them, like Knights of Beauty as well as the IPC, could be having good amounts of traction. So far, tried and tested, IPC seems to be having a lot more faction synergies, a lot more popularity in terms of the characters working well together. Whereas Knights of Beauty, we only have one, so you do have a bigger risk. But if you comes out, the Knights of Beauty all scale with each other, they buff each other and stuff like that, maybe Argenti could have a lot of value, but that is still untested. We have Balobok, which doesn't really buff each other much. We have other planetary factions which don't seem to benefit each other much. So perhaps IPC is the only special one so far, but that is one big angle of doing things. Why does that matter? Some of you might ask, is if there's investment from Hoyoverse point of view to continue screen time for a particular character, to sell a particular character, means that they will have to make that character relevant through the periods of time. If not, then that screen time is just wasted money on their resources, right? You just make the character, design the character, put them on screen, voice acting and all, and no one pulls them, so it's a net loss for them. They're unlikely going to do so. So means that they could get more supportive characters in future, more characters that synergize with them, or even relic sets specifically of them to help bump them up, depending on what you want to think of. In this category, I think Argenti is high risk, it's possible, but the clear winner here definitely will be a character like Jade. I think Jade would fare much better in potential. And of course, last but not least, before I share with you my own personal bias and opinion right at the end, as with all of these investment videos, and if you're finding value in this video so far, do give me a like, subscribe. We do this every single patch. If you like the format, to help you guys get a second opinion of the different categories too. Last but not least, free-to-play kit. I think between the two of them, Argenti is definitely a lot cheaper to build. He can be played break and also normal damage, because physical does a lot of break. You have now sources of break that can be funneled into him. For example, like Harmony MC funnels a lot of break effect. So physical, I think, is a lot cheaper to build. Quantum Break is not as, and I'm not as enthusiastic about Quantum Break in general compared to Physical Break as a pure DPS role, which means a lot of the damage from Jade will come from attack percentage, damage percentage, as well as crit rate, crit damage. For those reasons, I think Jade is slightly more free-to-play unfriendly because you require a lot more resources to get there, whereas free-to-play friendly gearing, Argenti is a lot better. But both of them are also decent because you have a lot of free-to-play like clone alternatives already, and we'll talk more about build guides for Jade subsequently on the channel. And if you guys found this video helpful, let me just go into my final personal bias. This is of course my personal opinion. Throughout the entire video, I was as unbiased as possible. In my opinion, between the two of them, I think Jade is slightly stronger or slightly better in investment value right now, even though I know it's Argenti's first rerun and likely the second rerun will take a long time to come. Physical is a rare element by nature, because as we mentioned, we only have a few alternatives, but Jade plays into many different teams upcoming and many different team compositions as well, which makes it just more logical that you are hitting more grounds for the same character rather than specifically going for one. But then the bigger question comes is it wise to pull Jade now rather than wait for her rerun in the upcoming patches? I think that will be probably the better ultimate decision, is to neither pull on both and wait to see how the meta evolves, because you are kind of taking a bit of risk right now for unnecessary things that you could just wait 6 months for, get her on the rerun, especially now since a lot of us have lack of resources after pulling for Firefly, Akirion, whatever those characters may be. And if you guys found this video helpful, honest feedback, and thank you guys so much for watching again, and see you in the next video.